Hey guys, I finally played against my first Grandmaster Challenger lobby. I've climbed quite a lot of LP in the last few days. I'm nearly up to 200 in Master. And so I kind of got matched up with this really late night last night, and I wanted to go through the game step by step because it was a pretty good game, and I think there's quite a lot to learn from it. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go through this game in normal speed, but I will try and cut sort of out some of the slower parts of the game so that you guys don't get too bored with some of the downtime. So first of all, thanks to G2A for sponsoring the channel. There is a reference link in the description below. Right, so this was a super dense galaxy where you get the immediate force of nature upon completing or starting stage 3. What I would say about this galaxy is it really favors compositions that usually don't level up super quickly. So things like Shredder, things like Mech, etc. They all get big value out of this because they can continue to roll at the lower odds while still maintaining a board with extra synergies that they wouldn't usually have access to. So this is a pretty good galaxy for those kind of builds. But actually, in general, there aren't many builds that don't benefit from this galaxy overall. This galaxy, as long as you're maintaining a stable HP in the mid game, is going to benefit you regardless of which composition you're playing. This is the kind of composition where, you know, for instance, level 8 compositions benefit. I would say that, again, like I said, those hyper roll compositions can benefit as well because you can get that extra unit in there. I think the only compositions that don't massively benefit from this are compositions that come online like at level 7, for instance, where an extra unit at level 8 doesn't really make a difference. But compositions that come online at level 8, they benefit from this galaxy pretty heavily because you can go to level 7 much more easily than you can go to level 8. And as a result, it allows you to activate some crucial synergies that allow you to finish your composition much before you would usually be able to do so without wrecking your economy as well. But in general, as long as you have a good mid-game, this galaxy is going to be fine for you. So at the start, I'm just having a scout around to see what people are going. I obviously picked up 2 Zayas here, and I have a glove. So this is a good start for Shredder if I wanted to go for Shredder, which is why I've picked up the Caitlins and why I've picked up the Zayas in this particular instance. I didn't actually need to sell the unit, the Zoe, with the glove on, but there's no way that I'm keeping a glove on Zoe regardless, so she was probably going to get sold anyway. And you can see here that I actually pick up loads of important stuff for the build. Like, I've now got a Zaya 2, which is this is a really good start for Shredder. If I wanted to go down a Shredder build path, I definitely could. Now, what I could see from this game is that there were quite a lot of people that were considering Shredder. I could already see a 2-star Caitlyn and 2-star Fiora on the bench, for instance. And this is what my scouting in the early game is for. Like, what are people combining? What are people, like, actually committing to in terms of units? What are they putting on their board? What are they holding on their bench? And I saw there was at least one other person that's got similar units to me in terms of committing for Shredder. Now, the items that I've got here, I would say they don't really speak to me as Shredder items. I have a QSS, so I have a Quicksilver there. And I have a Zephyr and I have a Trapclaw, all of which are like good items, but I'm not going to be slamming a Quicksilver or slamming a Trapclaw and saying I'm going Shredder. It's just not something that I consider a likely scenario, because slamming a Quicksilver in the early game doesn't usually mean that much because there isn't like a huge amount of CC for you to have to deal with in the early game. So that, I mean, Trapclaw can be good because blocking an ability and giving you a 5-second stun when there are so few units on the field is really nice. Plus, versus things like Kha'Zix and Kai'Sa, you're obviously going to get value out of it because, especially if like you saw there, my Zaya got killed by the Kha'Zix, especially with Caitlyn ultimates, etc. Like, Trapclaw can actually be useful in the early game, but I would say that Quicksilver just isn't that useful in the early game, which is why I didn't put it on. I haven't actually committed any items as a whole yet, though, because, again, I don't think, like, many of those items are going to be massively defining to a win or loss streak for me here. I have, like, a lot of powerful units. I've got Chrono and a lot of 2-stars on the board, so, I don't think it's going to be particularly defining to my win or loss streak just based on the items that I've got right now. So I'm just going to commit the Brawler's Gloves, and that's about it. In terms of positioning, I put my Zaya over in the corner, and what I'm looking for right now is any other Blitzcranks that might be on the very right-hand side. Like, I'm just having a look around at people to see, is there any Blitzcranks that could be on the very right-hand side? Because if there are, I'm going to have to move the Zaya. And I move her at the last moment anyway, just to sort of make sure I don't get I guess, taken by surprise versus that kind of player. But in this particular instance, I've grouped up versus a Graves. This guy's got a level 2 Graves. This means it's much less likely for me to win this because the Graves is obviously blinding my Caitlyn and my Zyra at the same time. But luckily, I sort of get that Caitlyn ultimate off, and Caitlyn is just such a strong unit in the early game. Win streaking or lose streaking, Caitlyn is always going to get you a singular kill. And more importantly, she gives you the chrono bonus really easily with a lot of other good early game units. Like Shen is a decent early game unit. Twisted Fate is a decent early game unit. So I find an Ashe here. This is actually really big because the sniper bonus early on is very strong. And I'm now pretty convinced that I'm probably not going to be going Shredder. And that, that just given the units that I found, I just had to sell the Zyra and put the Twisted Fate in. I think as an individual unit, Zyra is just better. Like as an individual unit, especially without items, without any good items, Twisted Fate is just better in this instance. And I decide at this point, because I really do want to continue my win streak into the next phase of Stage 2, that committing the Trap Claw is a good idea. Trap Claw is universally good. It can block a skill and it will keep someone stunned for 5 seconds. I just think having Trap Claw in this particular instance is just a nice idea. And you can see that I stunned the Mordekaiser, which is not a big deal for him because the Mordekaiser is still casting. But it's good enough to stop my Caitlyn getting too much damage, and this is going to allow me to actually win this round versus another player who is at 100%. So, this could have gone very badly wrong, but I think the Trap Claw just about saved the day for me here. And that's why I decided to commit the Trap Claw at this stage. I just thought, well, I want to have the win streak going into stage 2-5 up towards the Krugs, so I might as well commit the Trap Claw at this point. So there are two options that I have, and I think you guys can probably guess where this build can go. Right now, it's quite likely that I'm looking to play a sniper-orientated build. I have the Trap Claw, which is good for the Jhin. I'm probably looking to make a Ginsu's or a Deathblade at some time soon. I really would have liked to have had the BF swords here. I don't get them. What I do end up getting is an Ionic Spark. Now that might say, well, surely Ionic Spark's not that good for you. Like, why would you really want to commit that early? But to be honest with you, it's just a good item for mid game. And what is most important for me right now is less about the items being super good and more about the and more about me just having a really strong mid game. And actually, what's really nice about this Jace is that I can make an Ionic Spark on him, and he suits that item really well. So like Jace with a needlessly large rod here is just good, and I can make an Ionic Spark on him, and it just suits him really well. I don't think I do it yet. I do think I do it at some point. I do think I put the Ionic Spark on him at some point. I just don't know if I do it right now. Yes, it's versus this player. This guy's got an Ionic Spark, and I just think, actually, maybe just better to secure my win streak. Even though I have an advantage, I might as well just put the Ionic Spark down and end up getting a big Jace ultimate off. So I decided to commit the Ionic Spark there because this guy had a very scary-looking Poppy, and he also had the Lucian. So I decide to make the Ionic Spark there, and the reason I make the Ionic Spark is for the same reason I just mentioned. It's about continuing my win streak. It's about just making that win streak, a reality for me, because I want to make sure I can maintain this up until the Krug round. And with an Ionic Spark, Jace, Vanguards, Sniper, and Chrono, we've got a really strong early game board right now. You might wonder why I'm backlining things like this. I'm essentially putting my Caitlyn in the corner now because she has Trap Claw, so actually getting a stun on a Blitzcrank, I scouted out one of the players that I thought I was going to face. Getting a stun on a Blitzcrank at this stage of the game is actually pretty good. I'd rather get a stun on a Blitzcrank than him take out one of my units really early on. So in this particular instance, you can see he's actually got a lot of 2-star units, and I just want to get the stun on the Blitzcrank. Not only does it stop the damage coming through for Blitzcrank, but also it just takes another unit out of this guy's pool for a few seconds, and this allows me to very easily get a win going into the Krug round. I think Trap Claw in the late game is kind of wasted when going up against Blitzcranks, but in the early game, Trap Claw against Blitzcranks is actually a useful tool, because taking out 1 of 4 or 1 of 5 of their units for 5 seconds of the fight is a big deal. I mean, even though Blitzcrank got nerfed on the last patch, he's still a super strong, very annoying unit to have to deal with in the early game. So actually, I think what is worth noting here is I actually have 4 Vanguards. So I've got Mordekaiser, Jace, Leona, and Poppy, which are just the 4 early game Vanguards that you can get your hands on. I think that 4 Vanguards is a really good mid-game to work for right now, mainly because of a few meta shifts. You don't see as much Shredder And Shredder is significantly less powerful. And Last Whisper got nerfed from 90% armor reduction to 75% armor reduction. Now, to put that in context, it's 250 armor for 5 Vanguards. 90% armor reduction was, what? Took it down to 25 armor, I believe. So, if it's now 75%, let's work out my maths here. It's something like, I think you retain about 40 to 50 armor, which is still decent, right? I'm going to work this out, actually. I'm going to use a calculator. Sorry, guys, I'm a terrible, terrible mental mathematician. 250 multiplied by 0.75. 250 minus 187.5. It's 62.5. So 62.5 armor is actually still a significant amount of reduction to basic attack damage that you're going to take. So I just think having the Last Whisper nerf now makes 4 Vanguards actually really viable as frontline carries, and I wouldn't be surprised to see more 4 Vanguard compositions come out, even maybe over 4 Brawlers, for instance. So right here, you can see that I was going up against a guy with a Kha'Zix 3, and I positioned in a way, I'm going to talk about my positioning once I reset in just a moment, but I positioned in such a way that I have my Leona taking the initial damage, because she's level 2, and with the 4 Vanguard bonus plus her ultimate, she's going to really reduce the damage that she takes on the front line. So that's why I have my Leona up at the front, because she's there to take the initial aggro. My Caitlyn in the corner with the Trap Claw, of course. My Poppy on the right-hand side of my Twisted Fate, in case there is a Blitzcrank on the other side of the map, or someone switches their Blitzcrank over last minute. So that's why my Poppy is there. And then my Jason Mordekaiser at the front, because they'll either turn around and sort of attack any infiltrators, or they'll just walk up and follow Leona onto the front line. I also have everything backlined because it helps versus Kha'Zixes, so that my ranged are not likely to get isolated. I especially put my 2 snipers together because I know that they both have the same attack range and they are both unlikely to move. So I leveled up to level 6 as well very early. The reason being is that I have 2 Chrono, 4 Vanguard, 2 Sniper. This is actually what I would consider a pretty solid late game set of synergies, but we have it now at stage 3, and you can see just how strong it is versus certain players. Like, I just got a complete 7-unit win over this guy that I was facing up against. And we're still maintaining the 100% win streak. And this has just been about a selection of units for me, for the most part. It's been about sensible leveling up, and it's been about selection of units for me over the course of this game. Caitlyn is a great early game unit. Twisted Fate is a great early game unit, and they provide the 2 Chrono synergy, which is a really good early game synergy. Ashe, when paired with Caitlyn, is incredibly strong, plus her CC in the early game is really nice. And then I've just opted for Jace with Ionic Spark, because that's a really great unit, really great item for him. And then I have the 4 Vanguard bonus, which is allowing me to just be generally quite strong on the front line. Now, you might ask why I frontlined everything here. The reason being is I thought I was going up against the Shredder player, or at least I made a calculated guess that this would be the guy that I was playing up against. And I wanted to make sure that the Vi was stuck on the front line for a little bit longer, as well as the rest of the front line too. So I actually wanted my Jace to be on the front line with the rest of the Vanguards for a little bit longer, because I wanted to protect my back line from that Frozen Heart moving in too quickly. I wanted to protect my back line from being hit by that Frozen Heart too quickly, because that would really sort of limit the damage output that my backline would have if they were afflicted by that Frozen Heart. Item-wise here, I really want the BF Sword. It's quite unlikely to happen, just because I'm last pick, and BF Sword is a very contested item right now, for Kha'Zix, for Blaster Brawler, for Snipers, which are very popular at the moment. So I'm obviously unlikely to get that. Second best choice for me would be something like a Negatron Cloak, because it might allow me to get the Ginsus. But the thing I'm actually going to go for here is the Jinx. I tried to go for the Jinx actually with the tier, but didn't happen. I decided to go for the belt. Maybe I missed something on my bench about why the belt would be good in this scenario. It is because I have red buff. Okay, so this is the point in the game where I decided I just called someone get good in the chat. I was joking, but he was basically complaining that my 4 Vanguards were too strong. But I genuinely think 4 Vanguards in the mid game is really strong. So this is red buff, basically. This is what I wanted from this particular scenario. I decided to go for red buff. The reason I decided to go for red buff is because it's quite clear that I could very easily pivot into a Blaster Brawler scenario here. Even though there are a couple of other people that are contesting. I'm keeping my options open though, so I'm not actually committing to anything at this point in time. I'm just keeping my options open right now. And again, Blaster Brawler is just one of the few things that I could consider at this point in time. So this guy is actually pretty strong, and I end up losing to him, so my streak finally comes to an end. Kale 2 at stage 3-5, very unlikely that I beat that, even with just a single rod on her. So, you know, end of the day, it is what it is. I had a streak for the majority of stage 3, and I have a 50 gold economy, which is going to allow me to level 7 quite nicely. Also, Kale is not... Kale is offered to me in the shop right now, but I don't really have very attractive items for Kale. And to be completely honest with you, there are a lot of other people that are considering Kale at this point in time, so Kale would kind of be a waste of space for me. She doesn't really add anything to this composition right now, so there's just not much point in me picking up Kale in this particular instance. I'm just having a look around. It doesn't really matter if I win or lose this next round, but I am just trying to make sure that I'm positioning as best I can. I want to make sure that I essentially don't lose if I can help it, because obviously... Obviously, the more HP I can preserve, the more time I have to look for a potential sort of move into a different composition. And you can see here, like, we're still in a pretty strong spot. Like, this guy's got red buff, which is definitely good versus Vanguards, because it is going to be true damage, and it'll be doing percentage HP damage over time. But I still just have a very, very strong front line. Now, I was very close to losing here, because the Darius just, I think I do end up losing here. Yeah, I end up losing by a very small amount, which is, it is what it is. But that gives me a two loss streak, I guess. But it is a perfect loss at the end of the day, so that's perfectly okay. I get 1 extra gold going into the neutral round here, which is, you know, what we expected. So I thought about selling the Caitlyn here. I decided to sell the Caitlyn and add the Jhin at this point. Because again, like, I am thinking about snipers being a valid option for me at this point in time. I'm still thinking that snipers could be something that I gravitate towards, because there are not many other people going to... there are not many other people going to snipers at this point in time in the game. So I was definitely considering snipers as a potential option. So again, my options are still very open, and I'm still considering what I have available to me in this particular game. So getting a spatula here is interesting. I don't think there's much in terms of being offered in terms of spatula. I don't really think I have many good spatula... I don't think I have many good spatula targets in this game, unless I decide to go down a a path that is kind of like demolition spat focused. But what I would say is that I picked up the double Soraka and the Jinx and the Cho'Gath just in case I decide that I want to go down a Blaster Brawler route, because again, the point of this is that I'm keeping things flexible and open. And I actually have a pretty good Jinx build here. I have red buff, I have Infinity Edge, and I have Trap Claw. Now, that might not be the most insane Jinx build to have ever existed, but it is solid. Like, it's not a bad Jinx build by any stretch of the imagination. And Jhin, with these items, is still a good carry to have at this point in the game. I'm not willing to swap over until I find the right units to swap into. I think that's the moral of what my story right now, is that I'm trying to keep my strongest board alive, and even though I see the Jinx, and it would be very easy for me to just suddenly sort of say, okay, Jinx now, we Blaster Brawler boys. It would be very easy for me to do that. I just don't think it's the correct move at this point in time. But I'm going to keep them on my bench, even though they're costing me 1 gold economy at this point in time, because I could get up to 50 gold, as well as the units being on my board. I just think that it's the correct decision right now to preserve as much HP as possible, to retain my snipers and retain the build that I've currently got. As soon as I find another good blaster to put in, and I find potentially some more sort of like a 2-star Jinx, for instance, like, as soon as I find that might be the time for me to say, cool, that's enough, let's move over to the next build. But right now, just stick with what I've got. 1-star Jhin is actually pretty strong. Even though he ended up dying there, we know we're still killing a lot of units. Like, we're still actually doing a lot of work in these fights, and you can see, like, this 3-star Kha'Zix is probably going to clean up my comp, but we killed a lot of things here. Like, versus a 3-star Kha'Zix with rapid fire cannon, we did kill a lot of things in this particular loss. So even though I'm losing, I have a good economy, and I'm a few levels ahead of the lobby. I'm not actually losing by much. Someone asked me if I played Vainglory, by the way. That's a bit of a throwback. So I have 2 Jinxes. This is now a good indicator that I probably want to go towards a Jinx-based composition. So 2 Jinxes right now means I only need 1 more to get my 2-star Jinx, and a 2-star Jinx is a late-game carry. I'm very tempted. Like, you can see me. I'm so tempted to get rid of the Jhin. But I know that I know that I'm getting rid of Ashe at some point in this particular game. So I decided to sell her off to get above guaranteed 50 gold. The best case scenario for me to transition properly would be to go to level 8. Now, why would I go to level 8 in this particular game? Well, I'd go to level 8 for a couple of reasons. Look at the damage my Jin's doing versus double Frozen Heart, by the way. He's doing like 59 damage. Double Frozen Heart actually just destroys Jhin because it slows his attack speed so much that his AD gets slowed as well. Like, Frozen Heart is a really good counter versus Jhin, by the way. If you're going up against a sniper player, putting a Frozen Heart on one of your infiltrators and putting them opposite Jhin is a really good way to slow Jin's DPS. So what I'm looking for now is the chance to go to level 8 and potentially look for the late game Jinx build. The late game Jinx build is the one that sort of focuses on Misfortune and Gangplank, getting a demolitionist spat. So that's what I'm actually looking for in this particular instance. Now, no one actually went for the GP, which I found really interesting. They went for the Misfortune, but I just think that the GP is like, it's insane. Like, if I can get GP here, that's absolutely insane because he has a belt on him as well. And I can use that belt to make loads of things in the late game, like a Morellonomicon. I can use it to make a redemption if I really wanted to. So I actually think belt is a nice item on GP in this particular instance. So I don't take the Jhin here, mainly because I know that I'm not playing Jhin at this point in time. I'm wondering if I don't sell the GP right now. I decide to sell off 2 Vanguards at this point in time and then put on the Gangplank and the Cho'Gath. Cho'Gath is actually a pretty good individual unit, so I decided to just make that happen. There are a couple of things that I could consider for GP, but obviously I'm just not going to put any items. I'm not going to combine anything right now. Sorry, the music just randomly changed, by the way, guys. Rupert was crying. I had to go figure out what was going on. So right now, again, we're in a super strong position. This has all been from that early game. We used the early game sniper bonus. We're still using the sniper bonus at stage 4-5. Like, we haven't even got to our final comp right now. And it's worth noting that we are starting to lose. We are starting to become a little bit less powerful. Because we are kind of transitioning to the point in the game where late game builds are starting to come online. Like, people are starting to find their late game carries. We're starting to sort of have the late game powerhouses come through, because stage 5 is really where the majority of the magic happens. That's where you start to see the late game builds, the level 8s, the level 9s come through. So I decided at this point that I'm going to switch over. The reason I'm switching over here is because I find the Ezreal, and it gives me like a solid blaster to work with. Although what do I sell here? Do I sell the Leona or do I sell the Cho'Gath? I sell something for the Ezreal. I'm pretty certain I sell something for the Ezreal, surely. Surely sell something for the Ezreal. Jinx is really bad without another blaster. Okay, so I value, apparently, I value the Celestial over the blaster at this point in time, but I think that's probably an incorrect decision with the fact that I've got the red buff. But nevertheless, we're going up against a pretty strong player here with an Aurelia with an infiltrator spat, so it's just unlikely that we're going to end up winning anyway. But yeah, I definitely should have. I think valuing the blaster buff over the celestial buff was better. But we still, like, 4 unit loss isn't the worst thing in the world. Like, we're still in an okay spot right here. So I level up to level 8, and I guess this is where I just decide to put the Mystic bonus in. So I put the Mystic bonus in for the Jinx. If anyone in the comments talks about my karma positioning, I'm at this point on the neutral round, I'm gonna slap you. it's gonna happen. So I'm thinking about the Ashe here, but I just don't think committing to a 2-star Ashe at this point in time is probably worth it. Like, I think she's going to be replaced. Like, I can get Celestial from elsewhere if I need it. I think I also have a spatula, so it's possible. And something that happens here that's really nice is I find a double Ashe arrow. Sorry, not double. A double. I find a double rod, and that's really good for me because this is going to allow me to get a double rod is going to allow me to get Demolitionist Spat and also Morellonomicon for my GP. So I'm actually going to roll down a little bit more here. I'm looking for anything that can contribute towards a late game build. And what I'm talking about when it comes to contributing towards a late game is I'm talking a little bit about the late game Jinx build that you've seen me play on the channel a few times, which involves things like Wukong, involves things like Gangplank with Misfortune with Demolitionist Spat. And I'm just going to put the Demolitionist Spat for the time being on Ezreal. Like, if I just put it on Ezreal, I should have put it on Ezreal already. Like, that should have just already happened. But yeah, if I put it on Ezreal, like, I can just then transfer it over to Misfortune when I find a Misfortune. So I think that's the play here. We put the demo spat on the Ezreal. I could have put it on that round and probably should have put it on that round. So yeah, then we put it on the Ezreal. I don't know why I was thinking about that so much. In terms of positioning, what I'm doing right now is just trying to make sure that my Jinx is protected in the corner. And again, I am keen to make sure that my Karma doesn't attach to the Soraka. Now I don't exactly know how this works. Someone might be able to tell me. I don't exactly know how this works. I thought that Karma tethers to a unit at the start, so you can see the tether when you put her on the field. And then that's the unit that she gives the shield to. But I see right here, as you can see, she's tethered to Jinx right now. So Jinx is going to get the shield, right? That's the way I thought it worked. I didn't think it was a pure 50-50 between two of the... I didn't think it was a pure 50-50. That was kind of what I was getting at here. End up losing because the GA and double Ginsu's is just too strong. But nonetheless, I think we're in a pretty strong position for the late game. Like, we just need to stabilize a bit more. We need to get a Misfortune and we need to get a Gangplank too. If we can stabilize and get those particular units, I think we're in a great spot overall. So that's why I'm rolling at this point in time. I'm just rolling to try and find the sort of the 2 stars that I need to make this build work. So there is obviously a Wukong in the shop. I think actually getting a Wukong in this scenario is pretty strong because it allows me to get a 2-star Wukong. But I end up selling the Thresh to get a 2-star Gangplank, which I think is probably the right decision. I think 2-star Wukong is probably worth more than 2-star Thresh, so I decide to get the 2-star Gangplank with the Morellonomicon over that anyway. I'm just going to see. Okay, so my Karma randomly ends up shielding. So it's about the person that I guess she's closest to at the time, and she ended up getting really close to the Soraka. But yeah, this guy was really mad the entire game. The Twitch I'm USP. He's super mad the entire game. He keeps spamming the chat and pinging. I should have muted him a long time ago. So I'm wondering what I think this build is good. I think what the best changes for me would be taking out Karma and putting in Lulu, because that would give me Celestial, and then also getting Misfortune for Ezreal. That would be, I think, the best late game options for this build as a whole, because we already have Chrono with the Wukong and the Thresh, so we don't really need the Ezreal, so therefore bringing in Misfortune for the demo spat would be really strong. And then also I'd like to have the Lulu for the Celestial buff. Even though Karma's attack speed bonus is nice and definitely good for my Jinx, I just think having the Celestial buff is a little bit stronger. Plus we have the healing of Soraka, which is really nice. It keeps my Jinx going for longer too. He's also spam pinging my board and saying, is this even a build? And I told him if he spends less time pinging and chatting and more time trying to learn, he will get better at the game. I didn't think he'd like that. Oh, okay, so we got the Zephyr now, and we're going to do a little thing that you've probably seen a lot of people do, where I need to move that Soraka. Come on, Excoundrel, move the Soraka. You've probably seen a few people do this thing where they essentially place a Zephyr as the round starting to guarantee a good Zephyr target. So I place it to get... Oh no, I didn't place it. What am I doing? Wow. I'm a terrible player. I should have placed it on the Karma to get the Misfortune Zephyred, which would have helped. But nonetheless, we get absolutely smashed by this guy because... oh no, do we get smashed by this? Yeah, we do. We do get... No, we don't. Yeah, we do. Right, we do. No, we don't. We don't get smashed. Wow, that Gangplank ultimate is insane. Yeah. This build is really good, by the way. If you could get the demo on with the Gangplank, usually what you'd run is Sona and Ziggs. You've probably seen it on my channel before. Usually you'd run Sona and Ziggs. But you don't need that if you find demo spat, and I just found demo spat, so you know we kind of high rolled items in that regard. So I've kind of moved my positioning over a little bit now. Decide to make sure the Karma is guaranteed to nope. Yeah, there we go. Good boy, Excoundrel. And now we're gonna do the Zephyr thing. Now we're gonna make sure we Zephyr the right target. I put it on the Karma because it gets... Well, I thought it was going to get the Kale, to be honest with you, but it gets the Soraka. I think it was a 50-50 between the Kale and the Soraka at the back line, but irrespective, we've now got that double Gangplank ultimate coming through, which is just giving us like two huge team-wide CC. So versus the double Ginsu's Kale player, we actually end up winning, which is really nice. So the game plan for me now, because I think my build is really strong, The game plan for me now is to go to level 9 and find my 2-star legendaries. Like, that's just the game plan for me overall. I just want a good bench as well. So a good bench is things like Blitzcrank, Kassadin works really nicely, Soraka is a good unit to have on the bench, because these are all good bench units for Thresh. Last Whisper is not an ideal item. It doesn't really help me right now because my main DPS is coming from Jinx. But my secondary carries are Gangplank and Misfortune. So Misfortune can definitely just have a Last Whisper on her if she wants. You know, I can give Misfortune a Last Whisper and it's perfectly okay. So now we're just again searching to go to level 9. Like, level 9 will be the target for me right now. Or I can stay at level 8 and roll down and look for the Misfortune. But it is just much easier for me to search for a level 9. Because that's going to allow me to access one more unit, which could be a Celestial. And that means I could keep the Karma on, for instance. Or it could just be another Vanguard. Or anything, really. Just any more kind of frontline would be good as well. But yeah, overall, I think we're in a pretty strong position as a team right now. And I'm just scouting the lobby to see where everyone's positioned. There are a couple of pretty scary looking players on the team, but Mystic is helping me out. Like, Mystic's helping me out very much so versus this player, for instance, the Darkstar player. He just managed to put the Ashe in the right position, which was a little bit worrying. But again, it's not too bad for me because I have multiple carries. Like, I have the Gangplank and I have the Jinx. So if Jinx fails, Gangplank won't, right? If Jinx fails, Gangplank should be slightly better off. Now, unfortunately, I don't quite end up winning this because the Jhin has his 4th shot lined up and he just one-shots my Jinx right at the end. But it's not a bad loss. Like, it's a 1-unit loss, so I'm still preserving as much HP as I physically can. And once more, we are just searching to go to level. We're searching to go to level 9. Like, we're just looking to go to level 9 as a priority. Even if I don't quite have the economy to work with afterwards, like, just adding a Blitzcrank here is going to be nice because Blitzcrank actually gives me 4 chrono because I have the Ezreal, the Wukong, and the Thresh. So Blitzcrank, you know, when I talk about like having you need to have a goal when you level. So leveling to 9 there served 2 purposes for me. I didn't switch my Jinx over, I misclicked, my bad. So leveling to 9 had 2 purposes for me. A, I actually had something to put in that would give me some kind of beneficial upgrade, which was the 4 chrono. And B, it now gives me a slightly higher chance of finding the legendaries that I need to win this game. So I'm looking for Misfortune, I'm looking for Lulu, I'm looking for all those extra bits. Now, we end up losing this, even though we get the double Gangplank ultimate off, which isn't ideal because we're now at 17 HP, but we are level 9 now, so we're more likely to walk into units that will be beneficial for us. And we just need a Misfortune to make this comp really strong now as well. So I'm just trying to position around and split my carries up a little bit. Like, so I'm trying to make sure that my my Gangplank and my Ezreal, even Ezreal's not really a huge carry for me right now, but he's still a pretty strong carry. I'm just trying to make sure that my Ezreal is split up over the other side because, you know, even though he's not doing much damage, he still has a demo spat on him, so his ultimate's still going to get a big AoE stun on him if he gets away with it. Gangplank will always stay in the middle. Just because it's more likely for him to hit a really good area with his ultimate. And at level 2, he doesn't actually need that many defensive items to get his ultimate off. He's more likely to survive. So you can see, even with just a Morellonomicon, he's quite likely to survive in this instance. And the 2 strikes is one of the best upgrades you can get for him because, again, it just basically doubles his DPS output. And I think, you know, we're in a strong spot. I just need to find, like, if I could just find the Misfortune, we're in a really good position. So from this particular carousel, there are a couple of units that are really good for me. I would have taken the Seraphs, but actually, versus the kind of builds that we're going up against, something that is really good is Trap Claw. So just taking Trap Claw in this instance is really nice because it just gives me another defensive item that I can eventually put onto my Misfortune once I find her. So my Misfortune would be Trap Claw, Last Whisper, Demo Spat. That's going to keep her safe versus a singular ability. And I find the Misfortune here as well. And I'm actually going to keep the Blitzcrank on because the Blitzcrank is still a good unit overall. Like, Blitzcrank is still allowing me to pull one target over to my Jinx, and that allows her to get a reset. And I give the bow over to my Gangplank because just simply because if he can attack slightly quicker, he's going to get his ultimate off more quickly, which is really important. So I'm just making sure I scout the Zephyrs where I can. Usually I'd split my carries up, but this time I didn't. I just put my carries both on the same side. just because I felt like someone was trying to snipe my Misfortune with a Zephyr. So I just ended up moving my Karma over to a random side of the map, which isn't great, but it's also kept my Jinx and my Misfortune out of the majority of trouble here, and we end up winning this really nicely. So we get the win in this particular instance, and we knock out the KL player, which is great. Which now means that scouting is much easier, because we're now just looking at two left players that are left over to scout for. So what I'm searching for from this is Misfortune, and I find Misfortune 2, which is insane. So I decide to sell up and buy the Misfortunes, and then I buy another Misfortune on top as well, because if I can pull her in and she gets an immediate ultimate off, that's really nice too. Like, just getting another random Misfortune ultimate off is always really nice. So I'm just kind of scouting out Zephyrs. I can see the Ashe is on the other side for the Zephyr, so I actually thought that he would switch over. And so I switched my Misfortune, and he ended up selling his Ashe to put a new Zephyr on, but again did what I did and didn't put the Zephyr on in time. So this is what I was confused by. He put the Zephyr on way too late into this fight. He was looking to get a good Zephyr onto the target. I guess he was looking to catch my Jinx, but unfortunately that didn't work out for him, and he ends up losing because of it. Like, maybe if he Zephyred my Misfortune, who only had a Trap Claw on her, he actually might have been able to survive that round, but we ended up winning because of it. Like, he just put his Zephyr on too late. I don't think he would have won that round because my Misfortune was so stacked, but, you know, irrespective, he just kind of made a slight error right at the end there, which ended up costing him potentially a round, and maybe even the game. But yeah, that was a full VOD review of my win in my first Challenger Grandmaster lobby, so I hope you enjoyed it.